Hey everyone, welcome to another deep dive. Today we're going to be taking you through some really cool excerpts from 100 Questions and Answers.
It's a Finnish book
Yeah, by Hannu Toivonen.
by Hannu Toivonen, that's right.
And it's all about AI and really kind of getting down to like what it is and what it isn't.
Yeah, it's a fascinating read. And I think one of the central ideas the book starts with is this concept of AI as a metaphor.
Okay, AI is a metaphor. What does that mean?
Well, think about it this way. We often use very human terms to describe what AI programs do. So, you hear words like think or learn or decide.
You're like, my AI is thinking about what to do.
Exactly. So take Deep Blue, for example. That
Yeah.
was the chess program that famously beat Garry Kasparov.
Oh, yeah, right.
And it seemed like Deep Blue was, strategizing and planning its moves just like a human player would. But was it really thinking in the way that we understand it?
That's a really good point. It's so easy to get caught up in those descriptions and forget that we're talking about lines of code and algorithms, not like, a conscious mind.
Right. And this idea of AI as a metaphor, it's not just some kind of abstract concept. It actually pops up all the time in how we experience technology.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so how do we see that then?
Well, think about something like your smartphone camera. It probably uses AI for things like autofocus, image stabilization, maybe even recognizes faces to get like everybody in focus looking good.
Right.
Um, but when you're using it, do you ever stop and think, wow, my phone is like practically a genius? Or is it just like this cool feature that makes your life a little easier?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, most of the time I don't even realize that AI is involved, which I guess is kind of the point. Like it's most effective when it's just seamlessly integrated. It's not the main attraction.
Exactly. AI often gets the most attention when it does something that's like really new and groundbreaking, something that captures the imagination, like beating a chess champion.
Yeah, winning at Jeopardy. Hallmark.
Exactly. But as those achievements become more commonplace, that novelty wears off a little bit, and we start to see AI as just another tool.
So moving on to those tools then, instead of getting bogged down in this whole like, is AI truly intelligent in like a human sense
Yeah.
question, maybe we should be focusing more on what it can actually do, like the specific task that it's really good at.
Yeah, that's a really important distinction. And the book encourages us to move beyond this kind of general idea of intelligence and to look at AI's capabilities and its limitations in more kind of concrete terms.
So let's do that.
Yeah.
What are some examples then of tasks where AI really shines? And on the flip side of that, where does it still fall short compared to us humans?
Well, take something like a language translation, for instance. AI-powered translation tools are incredibly fast, and they can handle a vast number of languages.
Way more than I can speak.
Exactly.
I can tell you that.
But can they truly capture the nuance, the cultural context, those kind of subtle shades of meaning that a skilled human translator can bring to the table?
Not really.
Not quite.
I mean, you kind of get what it's trying to say, but it doesn't quite land the same way.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's hilarious.
Yeah, and it's often hilarious and it misses the point entirely.
Right.
And so it's interesting because that starts to point to what AI is really good at right now, which is those tasks that involve processing huge amounts of data, identifying patterns, making statistical predictions.
Okay, so that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because you say it can translate languages, it can do that pretty well, but it's not perfect because it can't get that nuance, that context. And those are the building blocks of something like automatic language translation.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about where AI is really good. What about where it kind of falls apart a little bit? Where does it still lag behind?
Well, one of the major areas is common sense. We as humans, we take it for granted, but it's something AI really struggles with. It might be able to process a million data points, but it lacks the intuition, the life experience, that understanding of the world that allows us to kind of make judgments and decisions even when things are ambiguous or unexpected.
Interesting. So it's almost like it can follow the letter of the law, but not the spirit of the law. It doesn't quite get that part.
Exactly. It can follow the recipe, but it can't really improvise in the kitchen.
Okay, that's a great way to put it. So AI might excel at following those rules that you're talking about, identifying patterns and data, but it would struggle with a situation that requires creativity, empathy, or that ability to adapt to something completely new.
Exactly.
Okay, so we're starting to see the boundaries a little bit here, right?
Yeah.
Like it's a really powerful tool, AI, but it's not this magic bullet that can solve every problem or perfectly replicate us.
Yeah, it's not a human replacement just yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. And that's a really crucial point to remember as we continue to develop and integrate AI into more and more aspects of our lives, we need to be mindful of both its potential and its limitations.
Absolutely. And, speaking of potential and limitations, on that note, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back after this. Which kind of leads to a question I'm sure is on everyone's mind right now, which is, how does it learn to do anything? If it's not thinking like us, this whole machine learning thing, it seems kind of mysterious.
Yeah, it's a bit of a head scratcher at first, but the book uses a really helpful analogy.
Yep.
Imagine a decision tree. Like, those troubleshooting guides you get with the printer.
Right, right.
Each step leads to a new question or decision based on the answer to the previous one.
Okay, I can picture that. But how does that translate to, say, like an AI learning to compose music or write code? Those seem like pretty complex tasks.
They are complex, but the underlying principle is actually pretty similar. So let's take music composition. You could feed an AI a massive amount of existing music, labeled by genre, mood, instrumentation, and so on. And the AI analyzes all these examples, looking for patterns in the melody, the harmony, the rhythm.
Okay.
And over time, it learns to associate certain patterns with certain characteristics, and then it can use those learned patterns to generate new music in a similar style.
So it's not just about replicating what it's seen before. It's like actually using that knowledge to create something new.
Exactly. It's about recognizing the underlying structure, the rules, and then using those to generate something novel.
Huh. Okay, so then what about, like you were saying, writing code?
Same basic idea. Feed an AI enough examples of code along with descriptions of what that code does, and it can start to learn the syntax, the structure of that programming language, and eventually can even start to generate its own code snippets or even entire programs.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
pretty mind-blowing. But it also makes me wonder, like, how do we make sure it's learning the right things from all this data? We've all seen those headlines about AI generating, like, weird or even offensive content.
Yeah, for sure.
So how do we prevent that?
Well, that's where the human element is absolutely crucial. We have to remember AI is a tool. And like any tool, it can be used for good or bad, right? It's up to us to make sure that the data we're using to train these AIs is representative, unbiased, and aligned with our values.
Okay, so it's our job to keep it in check.
Yeah, in a way. And we also need to be vigilant about monitoring the output of these AI systems, identifying and correcting for any biases that might pop up, and setting really clear ethical guidelines for how these systems are developed and used.
So it's not just about building smarter AI, but also building AI that's responsible,
Yeah.
right? Something that's actually beneficial for society.
Exactly. We really need to be thoughtful about the problems we're trying to solve with this technology, the data we're using, and those potential consequences, both good and bad.
Right, because those consequences could be huge.
Huge. We're talking about steering technology in a direction that benefits, hopefully, all of humanity.
Yeah, it's a big responsibility.
It is. It is.
It's like we're, I don't know, like trying to give AI a crash course in how to be human, hopefully without all the, the mistakes that we've made along the way.
Yeah, thankfully, AI doesn't have those same tendencies towards repeating history the way people sometimes do. But you've hit on a really crucial point here, which is that this isn't just about like the technical stuff anymore. This is about shaping the values of a technology that could completely change, well, everything.
Yeah, no, you're right. And it really is kind of a mind-bending thing to think about because we're so used to thinking about AI as this like futuristic thing, something that's going to like happen to us. But in reality, we're the ones building it, like right now.
Every day.
Exactly. And that's actually what I find so interesting about Hannu Toivonen's book. He asks this really thought-provoking question. Instead of always asking what AI will do to us, what if we focused on what we want AI to help us achieve?
Whoa. Okay, yeah. That's a good one. It's a totally different way of thinking about it. It really is. It puts us back in the driver's seat,
Yeah.
right? So instead of just like being afraid of the unknown, we can actually focus on how we can steer AI towards the outcomes we actually want to see.
So instead of like fearing some kind of robot uprising or whatever, it's about saying, hey, we can actually use this to, I don't know, solve climate change or something.
Exactly. Like if we want AI to help us address those big challenges, whether it's climate change, developing new medical treatments, creating a more just and fair society, those are goals that we have to set and then, actively work towards. AI can be this incredibly powerful tool in those efforts, but it's not going to just magically fix everything on its own.
Right, right. It's about being intentional, like you were saying earlier. We have to think carefully about the problems we want to solve, the data that we're feeding it, and then all of those potential consequences, good and bad. It's almost like we're not just writing code, but we're actually like shaping the future, you know?
It's a huge
Yeah.
responsibility. And it's on all of us. Toivonen reminds us that AI's future isn't some predetermined thing. We're creating it right now. Through the choices we make, the research we fund, the ethical guidelines we put in place, all of it.
Well, that is definitely something to think about. I think that's a great place to wrap up our deep dive for today. Hopefully, this has given everyone listening a better understanding of just how powerful AI can be, and maybe even more importantly, how critical our role is in making sure it's used for good. Remember, everyone, knowledge is power, and the more we know about AI, the better equipped we are to navigate this crazy, always changing world. Thanks for joining us, everyone.